I'm Bill Wedekind. I was born and raised in Manhattan, Kansas. I joined the Marine Corps at age 18 in September of 1967. I was wounded in Vietnam on the 25th of May 1968, where I lost both my hands and my eyes, and my left leg got a little messed up, but I still have it. I got interested in pottery in 1970, and I've been working with the pottery ever since. I'm also a ham radio operator. My ham radio call sign is KE0RN, and I've had a ham radio license since 1976.
I'm Pam Bryant, and I retired from teaching a couple of years ago and met Bill through a mutual friend. And originally the idea was that I would help him out once or twice a week, take him to a doctor's appointment, but it sort of evolved into a little more than that.
My maternal grandmother had a ceramic shop, and she had taken classes in throwing. She knew how to throw. And 6 months after I was wounded, she told me, she said, "Bill, I've been thinking about your situation a lot, and I think you could work on a potter's wheel." I thought Grandma was totally crazy. I was still trying to figure out how to do little things like dress myself. 6 months after that, I tried it, and got started in it.
I've minimized the disabilities in my own mind. I mean, they're still there. I'm still very blind. I still don't have any hands. But in my mind, I minimize it. And that allows me to control the disability instead of the disability controlling me.
And so here's a man who has some pretty dire challenges to live with on a daily basis. And he does it with incredible grace and style and humor and courage. You know, when I first met him, I think it was maybe the very first day when I was taking him out to Wilford Hall, and he said that he knew early on that he was going to forever be dependent on other people, and he better be somebody that they didn't mind hanging out with. And so he has a great attitude about it. And really, I used to have a little poster in my classroom that, you know, it's your attitude, keep it. He had to choose how he was going to deal with this, and he's chosen to have a very creative and productive life. And for somebody who's new to this, to a situation that's similar to this, maybe not identical, but similar, wouldn't it be pretty encouraging to know that somebody's gone before you and made this work, and that there are ways to do it? I think at some level, Bill saw that it wasn't going to serve him well to give up. And whoever would have thought that a blind double-hand amputee would choose pottery as a career choice? I mean, you know, how likely is that? Not much. But that's the power of grandmothers, and I love that part of the story too. You know, the fact that his grandmother is the one that was the way shower. I love that.
Grandma thought outside the box.
Yeah.
I was born in Manhattan, Kansas, and raised there, and I didn't discover San Antonio until 2008. And I was living here by 2010. In fact, this coming Saturday we'll be here 3 years. I love it down here. There's such a thing as snow. You guys don't have it. I joined the Marine Corps in September of 1967 at the age of 18. The night of the 24th of May, we were on the job of a reconnaissance Marine in Vietnam, there were 3 different patrols we used. And the third type of patrol was a fixed observation post. That was the safe one. That's the patrol I was wounded on. It was one of those, because the night before I was wounded on the 24th, we had a lot of movement around our defensive perimeter, so we called an artillery fire on our own perimeter. That stopped the movement. But because of that, that perimeter needed to be inspected the following day. And since I had helped set it up, I got volunteered to do that. I said I got volunteered. I didn't say I did volunteer. There's a subtle difference there. And I was wounded while I was doing that. I was leading a 4-man team to inspect that perimeter and see what was wrong, and I evidently didn't see something. The last thing I remember seeing was looking down the hillside into a brush-choked ravine, and I was real glad I didn't have to go down there because it looked like a real nasty place. But evidently when I was looking down there, I didn't do something right because that's the last thing I ever saw. The extent of my wounds, I lost, both my eyes were removed by the concussion, although this right eye had some shrapnel first. I've got a hole in, well, both hands were removed. My left leg kind of mangled a little bit, although I still have it, it still works. The foot was broke, the shin was broken, the kneecap. And they set the shin, but they didn't set the foot or the kneecap because they thought they had to cut the leg off because there's so much damage to the return blood vessels. My foot and ankle were black. They thought it was going to go gangrene, so they didn't fix it. But it lined up on its own okay. I don't have too much trouble with it. I've also got, of course, both eardrums were busted, but I had shrapnel penetrate my skull. I've got a plate here that's larger than a silver dollar, if anybody remembers what those look like. It's about 1.5 inches, 2-inch plate. And this valley on top of my head came not from me being wounded, but from the rotating my scalp to cover the plate. For 2 years I had to shave my forehead when I was bald on top. You know, it didn't make sense. But you know, it's, and it took a piece of this ear, broke both eardrums. But I've got shrapnel in my frontal lobe, and the doctors told my parents that my judgment could be impaired in some areas. But in 45 years, the only area we've noticed that my judgment's been severely impaired in is that of wife selection. I've made a couple bad decisions there. But anyhow, after I got back to the States and really got off the pain medication, it took about 6 weeks. I was wounded 2 weeks before my 19th birthday, by the way. It wasn't a bad birthday present though. Guaranteed income for life. You know, you could do worse. I retired at age 19, but when I got off the pain medication and had time to actually do some rational thinking, one of the first questions I asked myself was, why me? Why did it happen to me? Was I such a bad hombre that I deserved it? I had 2 ways of doing that. I could crawl off in a corner and feel sorry for myself. You know, self-pity. What a wonderful thing. It's a dead-end street. Because you're normally going to turn to one of 2 things, drugs or alcohol. And not either one of them are real good for you. So what I chose instead was to make the best out of what I had left. I had plenty left. I had some other decisions to make, and one was they put prosthetics on me, you know, artificial hands, only they were hooks. I mean, they weighed 3.5 pounds a piece. They were stainless steel, and that made me look like a double-decker Captain Hook, you know. The problem with it, you can't feel what you're doing with a hook. So I was constantly breaking stuff, hurting myself, breaking things, you know. They were dangerous. And I couldn't do anything with them. So I thought, there's got to be a better answer. Well, I got up to Heinz VA Hospital in Chicago, and I ended up talking with an orthopedic surgeon, and he told me about an operation called a Krukenberg amputation. This operation was developed in Germany at the end of World War I, because there were so many German soldiers after World War I who were blind old hand amputees. Because that was the only thing sticking up over the edge of the trench, was their head and their hands. That's what was getting wounded. But Dr. Krukenberg came up with a procedure, and what they do, they separate the 2 bones in your forearm, the ulna and the radius, halfway to the elbow. Then they reattach the muscle group that controls the thumb to the radius. And to close it, you just move your thumb against the side of your hand. Move it out. And when I need to twiddle my thumbs, I just do this. Because see, your nerves are stupid. The hands are still there, according to the nerves. I mean, I'm drumming my fingers from the little finger to the index. Okay? I still feel. Now there's such a thing as called phantom pain, and I can feel sometimes where every piece of shrapnel went through every one of my fingers and hands. It doesn't feel real good, but it doesn't happen all that often. But I opted for this operation, and the only people that do it on is blind old hand amputees. I had the left one done in March of 1969, but I waited until 1973 to have this one done. You can't see it by this distance or for the bush I've got growing over it, but there's a Marine Corps bulldog head wearing a drill instructor's cap where Smokey Bear had used to say USMC underneath it. And I waited 4 years because of that tattoo. I didn't want to give him a splitting headache.
I'm Pastor Jones, pastor of the Leon Valley Baptist Church. Been here 29 years, and I love what I do. My primary job is the 3 services a week, preaching, teaching once a week, and then the counseling and other things that go along being senior pastor. Well, I met Bill through a mutual friend, an acquaintance, 5 probably years ago.
2008.
2008 was it? Okay, 5 years ago, the winter of 2008. Hector Villarreal was going to have Bill come down and speak at a Vietnam veterans program, and he called me and said, "Hey, I've got this fella coming, and would I be interested in having him come to the church and share, his background and his testimony and what's happened to him?" We love Bill and love having him here. He fits in well here.
It's an easy place to fit into.
The children like him. They're not afraid to talk to him. Sometimes people with interesting disabilities or interesting situations are kind of standoffish, and therefore people are afraid to approach them. Even the little kids, I'm talking about 3 and 4, 5-year-olds, do not have a problem going up and talking to Mr. Bill. Now, initially, they want to know about him. Why don't you have any arms? And why don't you see? And at that age, they have no idea about Vietnam. They don't understand it. Even a lot of teenagers have no background and understanding of Vietnam. But they feel comfortable, and that's good. And part of that is Bill is not uncomfortable with himself. And so that makes people get very comfortable around him.
I think it's something that you have within yourself, that when you believe you can, you got a much better chance of succeeding. And granted, and generally for me, that works. When I believe I can succeed at something, I generally do.
So Bill, do different clays taste different? I mean, silver different than porcelain?
You want to go and give me a kiss or something?